Chapter 5. I can't look. Steve closed his eyes, airborne arms stretched out before him. It would be a shame if he managed to block the crossbow bolt and instead hit poor Roger with his sword, but his thoughts were moving too fast to think clearly. Steve felt his heart decrease as the bolt caught him in the chest. There was a loud "Huh?" and the creak of the gate, and then Steve was rushing forward again, pushing Roger the nitwit on with his shield. "Run, Roger! Run!" Whether the villager understood him or not, Steve had no idea. He scarcely had a moment to close the gate behind the both of them before they charged forward, Roger humming anxiously as he raced ahead. Steve was surprised. He'd had no idea that a villager could move that fast. If he hadn't been so angry with the green-jacketed nitwit, Steve might have been impressed. Right now, there was nothing to do but run. Roger took the lead, sprinting headfirst into the nearby birch trees. Perhaps he was a bit stupid, but right now, the urgency of the situation seemed to stick with him. They were in real danger. Roger didn't even have armor. Or a sword. "Keep going!" Steve turned, rushing to put away his sword and shield, and take out his bow, notching an arrow to aim at the nearest pillager. They were still much too close to home, but there was nothing he could do right now. The arrow hit the first pillager, who let out a grunt of pain and jumped backwards. They had such big eyebrows. It was probably a stupid thing to notice, but it was better than thinking about those massive crossbows and the excellent aim pillagers tended to have. This wasn't how he planned to approach this situation at all. Normally, Steve would have been careful. Yes, he would have sprinted through them and gotten them to chase him, but he wouldn't have to run into the forest. The trees blocked his way, and it was so hard to aim between them to hit anything. It would be just his luck if the pillagers somehow managed to hit Roger in all the chaos. So far, Roger's instincts seemed to have kicked in, and Steve lost sight of him entirely. Was that a bad thing? It was probably a bad thing. Steve notched another arrow and let it fly, smacking a different pillager in the shoulder. Wow, those guys look angry, Steve thought, racing backwards. Oh, this was what he'd been talking about. The trees were in the way. It was going to get him into trouble. With difficulty, Steve began to knock away blocks of leaves and even punch at the trees, breaking a straight line through the forest, while ducking down and under limbs to dodge the crossbow bolts. At least the pillagers didn't seem smart enough to do the same, and overall were having much more difficulty navigating the forest than Steve was. Ha! Steve knew that sound. That was the sound of a villager. A plain old villager, likely one in a green coat, who was in trouble. Roger was in trouble because... Of course he was! Why wouldn't he be? Spitting out a mouthful of leaves, Steve crouched to get under a birch tree, and spotted the source of the problem, just ahead of him. Unfortunately, he realized what had happened to Roger, just a moment too late. Roger had fallen. Roger had run out of the forest, and had been unlucky enough to find where the world split open, creating a chasm leading deep into the ground. The sound Steve had heard was Roger running forward and slipping over the edge, letting out a grunt of pain as he thudded onto a small ledge just a few feet down. A ledge that Steve missed entirely. In his madhouse sprint to escape the pillagers, Steve hit the edge of the chasm in a jump. Oh boy, this was going to hurt. As Steve hurtled over the edge, he caught a glimpse of Roger standing against the chasm wall, the pillagers closing in on his position. Poor Roger.